Cris Tales has been described by its developers as a gorgeous love letter to classic JRPGs, including the likes of Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VII, and Valkyrie Profile. If that wasn't enough, they also take inspiration from modern classics like Bravely Default and Persona 5. Now this is a bold claim to say the least, especially coming from a team making its debut, as this is the first game developed by the Colombian indie studio Dreams Uncorporated. The bar has definitely been set high, but can Cris Tales live up to its aspirations? In Cris Tales, you play as Crisbel, a young girl who lives in an orphanage under the care of the Mother Superior on the small town of Narim. While following a suspicious frog named Matias, you end up unlocking a mysterious power by using the crystals kept in the town's cathedral. And the future is a terrible sight, mainly because of the evil doings by the Time Empress who aims to conquer CrisTales. But with the help of Matias, you can peer into the past and act in the present to change this terrible future. As we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. Even though the future can be changed, Crisbel cannot save everyone. While traveling through the kingdoms tracking down the Time Empress, you'll face many choices with far-reaching consequences that will impact the world you experience. Will you prevent Mrs. Miller from becoming homeless alongside her newborn child, or will you save the town's only apothecary and keep the place stocked with medicine? Even with the time-changing twist, it is clear that Cris Tales follows a traditional JRPG formula. You're a young protagonist who travels the lands making new friends, learning new powers, and having the ultimate goal of saving the world. But this overused formula works thanks to the game's charismatic characters and how you're able to meet and interact with them not only in the present, but also in the past and the future. Cris Tales feels very lighthearted, which is no small feat since the story can get pretty dark at times due to the future you're able to see, which isn't yet written in stone. There is a certain point in the story in which the future side of a city looks weird, and that's when you realize that said city will eventually be flooded, and everything you see there is under the water. But even then, the game still succeeds in warming your heart thanks to Crisbel and the friends she makes along the way.
They're trying to reach the town!
This is a real fight, Crisbel. Time to use your new skills. Be swift, be precise. First, select attack, and then choose your target.
While Cris Tales is pretty honest about its inspirations, the game still feels fresh thanks to its unique time mechanic. This is first and foremost a turn-based role-playing game, and as such you can attack, defend, use skills, items, and even run away from random encounters. The uniqueness of Cris Tales comes from Crisbel's powers. As a time mage, you can warp your enemies into the past or future and mold your combat strategy around that mechanic. The best example happens pretty early on in the game. During your first boss fight, you'll face an enemy with a powerful steel shield that prevents you from causing any damage to her. The game instructs you to use Christopher's water attack, and then use Crisbel's skills to send the boss to the future. The shield becomes rusted, and finally you can damage the boss. Mastering the game's combat mechanics is essential since it can get pretty challenging at times, especially during its first half. While going from kingdom to kingdom, you'll travel through dungeons full of random encounters, and your HP and mana aren't refilled after each fight. You can also flee from these encounters, but that also means you won't level up and consequently not learn new skills, making upcoming fights even more difficult. As mentioned before, you'll recruit many allies throughout your journey. At any time, you can have 3 members on your party, each with their own set of stats, skills, and equipment. Leveling your party up enables you to learn new skills, which allows you to hit the enemy's weaknesses more easily. New equipment can be found by exploring or purchasing them from merchants. While in the overworld map, which is a kind of hub you go to while traveling from a city to a dungeon, you can freely save the game from the pause menu. But once you're in a dungeon, you have to reach certain places in order to save the game, and even then your HP and mana are not refilled unless you use a special item, which is pretty scarce in the early game. This item is 10,000 rubles, but you need that money early on to upgrade your weapons, and to a lower priority, buy new and better equipment. While the inspiration taken from classic JRPGs was explicitly talked about by the studio during the pre-release period, you can also notice inspiration from yet another classic franchise, Paper Mario. Cris Tales has a gorgeous world, mostly because of the hand-drawn 2D art, animated frame by frame, and the art style never got old as you kept traveling from kingdom to kingdom. And once again, even though Cris Tales does take inspiration from other games, Dreams Uncorporated's personal take makes the art style feel unique. But a great art style only gets you half of the way towards building a great world. A great soundtrack is also a requirement, and once again Cris Tales nails this. It matches the game's set pieces perfectly, and it never feels monotonous, unlike many JRPGs out there. The only problem with Cris Tales' world is that its nature contributes to a somewhat slow pace that permeates throughout the game. There is no map, fast travel, or even a way of making the protagonist walk faster, so the extensive world can make traveling between areas a chore. The lack of a fast forward option during battle also doesn't help, but it's at least understandable due to the parry and perfect hits combat mechanics. Now on to accessibility. This is Cris Tales' true Achilles heel. Whenever I start a new game, the very first thing I do is dive into its options, and Cris Tales surprised me with a barebones menu that provides nothing but volume sliders. Subtitles are activated by default, and I can't disable them, nor can I change their size. Even though the game supports 10 different languages, including French, Dutch, and obviously Spanish, if I live in a region with an unsupported language, the game defaults to English, and gives no option to change it. There are no closed captions, nor features that primarily target disabled players. As mentioned before, the combat can be quite tough at times, and yet there's nothing designed to help less able players make the game easier. While these are things that don't affect me personally, it will definitely let many players down, which is never a good thing. In conclusion, Cris Tales sets a high bar when describing itself as a love letter to some of the best JRPGs of all time, but indie studio's Dreams Uncorporated manages to exceed expectations by delivering a charming game with unique and challenging combat mechanics and a gorgeous art style. The characters are intriguing, especially with the ability to peer into their past and future, which makes you truly care for the protagonist and their allies, who travel alongside you during the 20 to 30 hours of this wondrous game.
Ooh, what have we here?